Alright you guys, well today I have for you this 2013 Mercedes-Benz GL450. Do a little walk around here. It is a pretty luxurious SUV. And think of this as like the Cadillac Escalade of the Mercedes lineup. It is a full-size SUV. And speaking of the Cadillac Escalade, this GL450 can actually tow roughly the same amount. I believe it's only 100 pounds less than the Escalade, which is pretty impressive. We'll pop the hood, show you the engine really quick. Alright, so this engine is a 4.7 liter twin turbo V8. Pretty good. I actually didn't realize these came with V8s. I always thought it was like a V6 or something, but no, it's a pretty powerful V8. Makes 362 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. Pretty powerful numbers, actually really not too bad. This is a pretty heavy SUV, weighs around 5,700 pounds, but this V8 moves it pretty good. But we'll close up the hood. We'll check out the cargo area here. And yeah, it's a decent cargo area. Maybe it could be a little bit bigger behind the third row, but you kind of expect that for an SUV like this. You do have a spare tire underneath the floor, which is pretty nice. And we will check out this third row. So you can fold this third row down electronically with these little tabs right here. Pretty nice. You do get a 12-volt outlet back here as well. Doesn't look like there's a control back here for the second row. It looks like you do have to go up to the side of the seats to fold them down. But we will close the trunk here. And pretty quick closing, actually, as you can see. We'll check out these back seats here. You do get these running boards, by the way, but I find them a little bit difficult to step on, so I usually don't even really use them. And backseat room, as you would expect, it is pretty good, pretty spacious. These doors are pretty large. That's something I like just noticed now. But yeah, backseat room, like plenty of space as you would expect. It's pretty cozy back here, actually. And you do get vents back here. You don't really get heated rear seats, which is something I was kind of expecting. But this is a little bit of an older car, have to remember that. Probably like the newer Mercedes would offer more like USB ports, maybe heated seats, like amenities like that. And in this 2013 GL, you're kind of missing some of that stuff. You do have this nice panoramic roof, which is pretty cool. And you have another glass panel in the third row right there. So that's pretty nice, pretty unique. You don't see 3 glass panels too often. But we'll try out this third row here. So just gonna fold the seat up and forward. Headrests are pretty big. You can also fold the third row down from here as well. That's pretty interesting. But I'll have to move this seat up so I can get into the third row here. Okay, his headrests really do kind of get in the way here. I might just take this one out. All right. Pretty easy folding action though, and you get like a really huge passageway into the third row here. All right, and this third row, it isn't too bad actually, as soon as I get the headrest up here. But this third row is actually pretty decent. Like, it's not, obviously it's not super spacious, but like I'm like a full-size adult and I could sit back here pretty fine. I might not be the most comfortable, but it's certainly a huge step up compared to those other SUVs that are just like unusable back here. I'm happy to say this is actually a pretty usable third row. Not too common in SUVs. But we'll hop out of the third row and we'll show you guys some of the features up front. All right, just gonna fold the seat back down here. Put the headrest back in. The car always makes kind of a ding when you open the door. Kind of a unique feature you notice, but we'll start it up. All right. Pretty nice startup there. That V8 kind of rumbles the whole car a bit. And you know, this interior is actually pretty nice. I do like the finishes in here. It is wearing a bit. I noticed like these leather seats are a little bit rough. The actual seat quality isn't too bad, but the leather is kind of peeling a bit, I notice. But other than that, I do really like just the general ambiance of this interior. When I first got in this car, it was nighttime, and the interior lighting at night is really nice. It's got kind of like an orange glow to it. Nice like color scheme in here. You got like these brown armrests, beige, you know, door panel and dash. I like this wood grain stuff, even though it is obviously fake, but it looks pretty good. It's a nice touch here. Got a lot of buttons in this interior. This was still in that phase where automakers were just adding more and more buttons to their interiors. And this Mercedes GL kind of followed that trend at the time. This infotainment screen is a little bit basic. You don't really get much in here. It's a little bit dated and a little bit basic looking. It's pretty easy to control. You basically just have 4 categories: radio, disc, phone, and navigation. And this is the nav system. You use this little scroll wheel to control it. This isn't a touch screen, but the scroll wheel is fairly easy to use. It's not like Lexus or something with that mouse wheel thing. This is a little bit easier to use than that, so pretty good. And you're not really using this screen too much anyway. You're mostly just using the buttons and the controls right here. You do have your radio. It looks like a standard infotainment radio from this era, like in a standard Mercedes. You don't really get a tuning dial. You just have these seek track buttons right here. Something weird, this volume control is really kind of finicky. I notice I have to press it in and then turn it to get the volume up. I don't know if that's like a Mercedes thing, if this car was like designed that way, but that's kind of a little bit unusual there. You can also turn off the screen with this button. You do get your heated seats, your hazard lights, traction control off, and a few other blank switches. A lot of things in this car were only available as expensive options, kind of typical of like a German car that way. So I assume these blank switches, if you paid more, you got something in this place right here. You do have your simple climate controls, actually kind of like this. These dials show like what temperature it is with that little red light. You do have your fan speed, quite nice. A lot of modern luxury cars, the climate controls are just unnecessarily complicated, but this is easy to figure out. You do have your air suspension. You do have your 4-spoke steering wheel, not the sportiest looking, but it is pretty smooth. It feels pretty good. You do have your shifter for the 7-speed automatic. Up, it puts it in reverse, and you do get a pretty nice backup camera. Looks decent. You push down for drive and push in on the end for park. You do get your turn signals and your wiper controls. So this controls the wipers, and press it in for windshield washing right there. You do get your heated steering wheel as well as your electronically adjustable steering wheel. And you do get your cruise control stalk right here. On the steering wheel, this is how you control the center screen. Gives you most of your typical information like your odometer, your fuel consumption, your trip meter, all that good stuff. Nothing too unusual in here. You have your headlight controls. You also have your electronic parking brake right there. It goes on like that, but you can push it off. You do have your seat controls on the door right here, kind of a typical Mercedes thing, as well as your driver's seat memory. Well, check out this center console. It's got a pretty interesting action to it with pulling this thing, and pretty big center console, not too bad. And you do get a glove box, which is also a good size. You also get a USB port in the center console right there, and you do get this little Mercedes adapter thing for if you want to plug in an aux, for example. You don't really get as much modern tech as a new car, but it's still kind of a nice ambiance to it. I still like it. It's still got a pretty good engine. You also get this Harman Kardon sound system in here. The seatbelt also like snugs you in place when you put it on. Kind of a weird sensation, but you do kind of get used to it, I guess. But we're just gonna put it in drive here and set off. All right. This car is kind of like a nice seating position. This windshield, you might not even really notice this on camera, but you feel like you're sitting behind like a desk or something. This windshield is kind of like narrow looking. You can tell it's a V8. It has that V8 rumble to it. You often hear kind of a whine with this turbo. At least I think that's the turbo. It could be like the transmission or something. These brakes, you know, they're a little bit mushy. Feels like you're stopping a big, heavy vehicle when you step on them. They're pretty smooth and easy to operate, but do have kind of that like mushy character to them, I notice. The suspension is kind of wallowy. I notice if I go over like a dip in the road or something, the whole car kind of bounces up. So yeah, it is a bit of a wallowy suspension. I kind of expect that. This is like a full-size Mercedes-Benz SUV. But it's almost a little bit too floaty for my liking. That's just my opinion. I think a lot of newer cars blend like smooth ride and good handling just a little bit better than this. I do really like the sound of this V8. It is a little bit slow moving initially. There's a bit of a delay. Feels a bit underwhelming at first, but then once you dip into the power band a little bit more, this thing actually takes off pretty impressively. Yeah, that's actually, it does throw you back in your seat a little bit. I do actually really like the power. I'm gonna try to pass this guy. Transmission is pretty responsive. It did take a little bit of getting used to with this throttle response. It is a bit soft at the beginning, I notice. You kind of, like that first initial travel, nothing really happens. You do have to dip into it a little bit sometimes. But once you get used to it, it's a pretty smooth and pretty easygoing throttle. You do have pretty good visibility in here. Like, I get a really good view of the road. It's not quite the high up seating position that you might think it is. It's not like you're driving like a pickup truck or something, but it is a pretty good seating position. You get a good view of the road. This front hood slopes down pretty well. I do think these side mirrors could be a little bit bigger. They're actually kind of unexpectedly small. And this is a really long vehicle, so you do kind of want bigger side mirrors in a car like this. But you do get a really nice view out of the back. I actually wasn't really expecting the visibility to be as good as it is, because a lot of these big SUVs have really narrow belt lines and they're a little bit harder to see out of, but this one actually, like, it has a big back window, a big clear view of the front. Yeah, really not bad where that's concerned. This steering is super soft, really light steering. Probably one of the lightest, like, loosest kind of steerings I've ever felt, really. It is a bit lazy for my liking in the steering feel. It's pretty numb, really not like any feedback from it. But it is like a luxurious feel. You know, this is more of a luxury focused car. And so I don't totally mind the steering being light in this. This car is still pretty maneuverable, I'll say, despite the steering being pretty light. You can still, like, you know, tell where the car is going. It's still really easy to control. I do get the sense that the refinement in here could be a little bit improved. Sometimes I hear some rattles going on, especially when I hit a bump. And this car in general can be a little bit dramatic over bumps. Despite it having such a pillowy ride to it, it does get kind of dramatic when you hit a bump. It kind of, like, the whole body kind of sways a lot. And you do hear some, like, tire noise and road noise in here. That was a little unexpected, you know, for, like, a full-size Mercedes SUV. I was expecting a little more refinement, I think. All right, let's try stepping on it here. Ooh, man, wow. That actually is impressive. You know, you don't really notice the power, like, early in the rev range, but when you get past, like, 3,000 RPM, like, man, it's definitely fun in terms of that, in terms of the power and performance from this engine. And transmission is nice and responsive. Nice and smooth shifting, maybe a little bit fuel economy focused, maybe a little bit limiting in terms of fun factor, but still a pretty intuitive and compliant transmission here. We'll pull into this little neighborhood, check out our turning radius. It is definitely a big bouncy vehicle, but it has good maneuverability for its size, I would say. It's not like sports car handling, but pretty maneuverable. And that's a decent turning radius, you know? A little bit better than average, I would say. Yeah, V8 definitely fun to ring out. All right, looks like we have a clear road in front of us. All right, yeah, just gets right up to speed. Like I said, have to work for it a little bit with that throttle, but not too bad. All right. It's not like super communicative in the steering or suspension, but it does get around pretty good. I will say that. Pretty like predictable steering. It doesn't have a whole lot of feedback to it, but it is nicely predictable for a car of this size. You don't want to drive it like a sports car, obviously. It doesn't really hide that it's a big car, but it's decent, I'll say. This car doesn't really have any fancy drive modes like maybe a newer Mercedes would have. You just kind of have a normal drive. You do have paddle shifters, which I might try out. Yeah, it's pretty quick. The transmission isn't like laser precise, but still lets you access all of that power. But we'll try these paddle shifters here. All right, yeah, they're not super quick, but they work at least. It's not as linear of a power band as like a V6, for example, I notice. But it's smooth enough for a Mercedes, I would say. This car is kind of like meant for just like driving your kids to school. It does kind of feel like that to an extent. But if you do need to get up to speed quickly, or just want to have a little bit of fun in your 3-row SUV, this does let you do that on occasion. All right, we will try taking it on the highway here. Ooh, thing just like screams. I really do love it. And as you would expect, it's pretty smooth on the highway. It can feel a little bit lumbering, I would say, at higher speeds. But it's still pretty manageable. Like going over those bumps, the body of the car kind of shakes a little bit. We'll try taking this exit here. And we can test out these brakes a little bit. All right, there is quite a bit of nosedive under braking. And the brakes are a little bit mushy, I will say. It's not really anything to be concerned of, but not a car you really want to speed like dangerously in. Of course, you shouldn't do that in like any car, really. But if you're gonna do it, this is probably not the car to do it in. It can handle some speed, but it's definitely not a sports car. We'll try getting back on the highway here. All right. I have a phantom issue all of a sudden where the left turn signal doesn't seem to work, and neither does the right turn signal. Oh wow, that is interesting. I've never quite seen that before. Kind of the problems of an older Mercedes. Maybe I'll try turning the car off and back on and see if that helps the turn signal thing. All right, there we go. That seems to have fixed it. All right, well, I think I'll end the video a little bit up here. Pretty sure I talked about everything with this Mercedes GL450. It's a pretty nice luxury SUV for the right type of buyer, I think. Might not be totally my cup of tea as an enthusiast. It's a bit of a mixed bag for me personally. I do really like this V8. While it doesn't have a whole lot at the beginning, it does take off with really unexpectedly good power in the higher revs. And, you know, I do like the look of this car. I like the presence it has. It's very tough. It's a very tough looking SUV, I think. It screams wealth and status in a way that a lot of other SUVs don't really capture. Got a very smooth ride, very soft ride, a little bit too much because it is quite floaty and quite wallowy. It doesn't handle too bad for a full-size SUV. It's not a sports car, but it does have a generally maneuverable feel to it. One thing that was a bit of a concern for me was just some of the lack of refinements in certain areas. Like the road noise was a bit loud for me. There were some rattles and some vibrations in here that I noticed. Also, reliability wise, I can definitely tell this car has electrical issues. You know, like the turn signals, they just stopped working for me randomly during the video. And this blind spot warning doesn't work. You probably don't want to buy one of these that has issues, because I can imagine this car gets expensive very quick. But we're gonna hop out and we'll shut the car off. All right, thanks for watching, everyone.